Imagine if we went back in time and gave an NFL team a cheat sheet for the draft, telling them exactly who the best players are in the position they are drafting for the first and second rounds, occasionally giving them a little nudge when it comes to free agency and who they shouldn't let go. What would those teams look like now if they were able to always play the draft perfectly? That's what I'm here to try and answer. It's the Arizona Cardinals' turn, and they have a lot of correct picks, and actually probably are up there with one of the most correct teams possible, but the size of some of the blunders they made on some of the other picks probably knocks them out of contention for the best drafting team as we look at this. We also have a space-time continuum shattering change we're going to be making, but that will all come towards the end of this, as that's where the positions are that will be changed. So we start with the first three offensive linemen completely unchanged. Jared Veldheer, Mike Iupati and A.Q. Shipley all still there. And at right guard, we've got a decision to make, because in 2013 with the 7th overall pick, the Cardinals selected Jonathan Cooper at offensive guard, and they could have taken Kyle Long. Now, of course, Kyle Long would still be on the team, but the Cardinals traded away Jonathan Cooper along with a second-round pick for Chandler Jones from the Patriots. So if we say they took Kyle Long instead, it means they couldn't have ever traded for Chandler Jones, who I want to have on this team. Therefore, the right guard position stays as it was last year, no Kyle Long for them. Earl Watford instead will be playing right guard for them, and it's a downgrade there, but without that they wouldn't have Chandler Jones on defense, and I think that's more important. So technically in that sense they made the correct pick, but of course in terms of taking the best player, they definitely did not make the correct pick. Then at right tackle in 2015 with the 24th overall pick, they selected DJ Humphries, who was the only first round player to be inactive for his entire rookie season in 2015, but he is still the correct pick. With all that said, he obviously actually played well this season, had to play left tackle as well for the team, did well, and we've looked at this right tackle group from 2015 a couple of times. There's no serious standout player there, so as long as you've got a guy that's starting for you, you probably made the correct decision. Then at tight end, of course, they have Jermaine Gresham, who they just re-signed for a 4-year deal, but also on top of that, in 2014 with the 52nd overall pick, the Cardinals selected Troy Nicholas at tight end. Now usually you can't go wrong taking a Notre Dame tight end in the draft, but CJ Fedorowicz would have been a better pick. I don't actually think I would put him above Jermaine Gresham there, but just overall wise, because we're using this to build a team, I'm going to have him in that order. Moving on to the wide receivers. So let's just begin with filling in these 3 spots with players that are actually on the team. Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown, JJ Nelson. Now this probably isn't the exact way they would have these players, it's just the way I'm putting them in here. And this is where we hit another bump in the road. In 2012 with the 13th overall pick, the Cardinals selected Michael Floyd. And now if I was doing this before the start of this season, I would have absolutely said that was the correct pick. And I would still say that was the correct pick for the number of years they got out of him at a high level. Other players they could have taken basically that kind of fit the same model as Michael Floyd would have been Alshon Jeffrey, but I'm going to say it was the correct pick, and because it was the correct pick and they cut the guy, and probably for good reason, I'm going to say he can't be on the team. So although they made the right pick with Michael Floyd, or they could have had Alshon Jeffrey, I'm going to say correct pick, but it makes no difference to this team. They would still here have Larry Fitzgerald, John Brown and JJ Nelson. So on to the running back position. In 2011 with the 38th overall pick, the Arizona Cardinals selected Ryan Williams at running back. DeMarco Murray was the man you could have had instead there, and of course at the running back position they also have David Johnson, who they got in the 3rd round themselves. And then to finish this off, because Bruce Arians hates fullbacks, there's only a quarterback left, Carson Palmer of course would still be the man here, and that is the Arizona Cardinals offense. Almost no changes. The only change there is that DeMarco Murray would be backing up or, sharing duties with David Johnson and would just be complete overkill. And you've got CJ Fedorowicz as well as Jermaine Gresham. But with all that said, let's move on to the defense. And this is the place the Cardinals do best. On defense, free safety, Tony Jefferson. DJ Swearinger at strong safety. Of course, with those two being the safeties, there's going to be some different stuff happening a little bit later on. Now on to the linebackers. Right outside linebacker, I just went over this. They do trade their Jonathan Cooper and the 2nd round pick for Chandler Jones. So Chandler Jones would still be the man in that position. Then at left outside linebacker across from him in 2015 with the 58th overall pick, the Cardinals select Marcus Golden. Obviously the correct pick, 12.5 sacks last year. Now onto inside linebacker. In 2013 with the 45th pick, the Cardinals selected Kevin Minter. Now that's a not bad pick. That's what I'm saying. It's very, very close to being correct. However, Jamie Collins was also available at that position, and I feel like the type of player Jamie Collins is really fits what the Cardinals like. Of course, Kevin Minter is very good for them, like I said, but Jamie Collins, I think, would perfectly match with the next man. In 2014, with the 27th overall pick, the Cardinals selected Dejon Buchanan, which was the correct pick. Now, they drafted him as a safety, and he was pretty much the best safety they could have taken anyway. If he was drafted as a middle linebacker, he probably would have been the best linebacker they could have taken. Of course, he's a little more versatile than just being their middle linebacker. That's why I also think Jamie Collins would perfectly match. Athleticism there in the two middle spots would be the perfect match for the Cardinals, although like I said, Kevin Minter wasn't a bad pick whatsoever. Moving on down to the defensive line. No changes here, all boring. Calais Campbell, Corey Peters, Frosty Rucker. Stretching a little bit with Frosty Rucker, who wasn't actually the starter in that position for them last year, but we're going with it. On to the cornerbacks. In 2011, with the 5th overall pick, the Cardinals selected the only player you could select in 2011 that isn't going to be replaced by Richard Sherman. Patrick Peterson would still be here on the team. Of course, the correct pick. Across from him, a little trade they made that worked out very nicely. Marcus Cooper. And then in the nickel position, and that's of course why I put Tony Jefferson at free safety, is because we can have Tyrann Mathieu down here. And those are the cornerbacks for the Arizona Cardinals. Well, actually, they're not. See, we've traveled back in time, and the one thing I would change if I could change, and this makes me feel sick to I'm not even a Cardinals fan, and thinking about this trade makes me feel sick to my stomach. If you were counting along, you may have realized I only mentioned 9 draft picks. The Cardinals selected 1 and 2 every year, except for in 2012 where they didn't have a second round pick. And that's because the Cardinals traded that second round pick and Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie to the Eagles for Kevin Kolb, a man they cut a few years later and never fixed the problem at quarterback they wanted him to. But having traveled back in time, we can undo this. We can say to them, don't do that. Do not trade Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie away. Imagine what you would have here with Patrick Peterson, Rodgers-Cromartie, Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus Cooper, Tony Jefferson and DJ Swearinger as your defensive backs. Scuppering that to try and make it work with Kevin Kolb, which it doesn't. No chance. We're here, we've traveled back in time. If we do nothing else, we've got to change this. It's a huge change. Of course, it changes everything. It would send ripples throughout the league. Who knows what would be different? But I don't care. I'm making the change. I cannot stand to think about them having done this. Honestly, as a pit in my stomach, I can't even imagine what it's like for Cardinals fans. The thought of what could have been, and this is what could have been. The most ridiculous, by far, compared to none, the most ridiculous cornerback group in the NFL. Probably as crazy as there has ever been, especially with Tyrann Mathieu healthy and playing that nickel role, or, you know, probably just playing as a third safety most of the time. You can't beat these defensive backs. And these are the Cardinals if you made, you know, a couple of changes and some pretty major ones.